Would you pay $2,000 for a phone that looks like this? What about if it looked like that? Samsung's hoping that the Galaxy Fold is going to entice people to spend $1,980 because it's the first commercially available phone that folds out and opens up into more of a tablet-like device. Now, the basic specs inside this are not really changed from the Galaxy S10 Plus, except for an upgrade in battery and 12 gigabytes of RAM. But what really matters is making all that work in a device that can flip open and offer you a 7.3-inch 4x3 display. This display took Samsung 8 years of research and development in all of its curved OLED technology, and as you can expect, is covered with plastic, not glass. We'll get back to that in just a moment. But the real technical marvel is being able to fold this in half thousands and thousands of times without any degradation of the screen or the screen covering itself. And that also comes from this really ingenious dual hinge design that's completely covered, and then when you open it, it completely disappears. There are lots of little flourishes like that in the Galaxy Fold that makes this thing so unique, and you know you're going to be turning heads, and that's part of why Samsung thinks it can charge $2,000 for this phone. Now, what does that extra screen real estate actually offer you? Well, it's all about multitasking and content viewing. With a 7.3-inch display that comes in at about a 4x3 aspect ratio, you can do all kinds of browsing, scrolling up and down, left and right without any letterboxing or any issues, and you actually get a pretty good viewfinder for full screen video, even if you're also multitasking with other apps. And that's actually where the larger 7.3-inch display really takes off. Samsung's interface makes it really easy to slide those apps around. The only issue right now is that apps on Android don't always really resize very well to a tablet size form factor. And that's one of the only limiting things that you need to think about here. Because this is the first device of this form factor, you're gonna run into some issues where apps just don't wanna resize, or they look a little funky up at this nearly 4x3 aspect ratio display. Now, what about using the phone with it closed? This is a 4.6-inch 21:9 display, and as you can see, it is pretty heavy on the bezels, but that's just one of those compromises you make to have a display on the front and on the inside. But because this thing is so large when it opens, you're not going to be able to use it open in one hand very well, especially if you're walking down the street or just checking out quick notifications or sending an email. It's manageable, but if you're coming from anything of any sort of a modern phone, it's going to be really tough to downsize back down to this. Now, Samsung worked with Google to get what's called app continuity working on the Galaxy Fold. And that means that with certain apps, and not all apps once again, you can do things like open up Google Maps and then have the full screen experience once you unfold the phone. Now, that's not gonna work with every app, but as you get app updates out and as people start to use the Galaxy Fold, it's gonna become apparent that all app developers are gonna need to handle this transition between a small screen on one side and then a larger screen in a completely different aspect ratio and resolution on the inside. So the whole reason why you're buying the Galaxy Fold is for this open screen experience. Even though you can use the Galaxy Fold with just one hand and the cover screen on the outside, this is the reason why you're paying $2,000 for a phone. It's for this full screen experience. And how does it work? It actually works pretty well. Most of the time, you're not going to be viewing things full screen unless you're maybe reading an article or watching a video. Most of the time, it's going to be putting up apps in this 2/3, 1/3 split that lets you get content on one side in what would look like a regular phone screen, and then having something else to reference on the other side. And you can quickly switch between the two. You can pull it to 2/3 and 1/3 on the other side, or you can pull it across all the way, get back to your full screen app. You can also add in a third app, of course, and then those floating windows that I talked about. So when we think about the Galaxy Fold, you can't put it in the same context as a regular smartphone. Even with how big smartphones have gotten with the Galaxy S10 Plus, this is so much larger and so much wider in this different form factor. We're gonna have to change how we feel about holding onto a phone a certain way, when it's acceptable to pull out our phone, how often we use the cover screen versus the display on the inside, and it's really going to change the paradigm of what we think of as a smartphone versus this tablet-like device versus all of these other convergent devices. So let's talk about a couple of those trade-offs. Of course, the Galaxy Fold is rather large when it's deployed, but it's also particularly large when it's closed. It's basically double the thickness of a Galaxy S10. That makes sense, it looks like two Galaxy S10s stacked on top of each other. It's also considerably heavier, about 40% heavier, and that doesn't seem like it'd be that much because the Galaxy S10 is relatively light. But when that is folded over on top of itself in your hand and you're walking down the street like this, it really feels dense. Now, in the positive column, the Galaxy Fold feels fantastic. It's really solid, and I'm sure that Samsung could have cut out a lot of that extra weight in the metal and glass and the hinge mechanism. This thing wouldn't feel nearly as good, and I would much rather have it feel this solid than be a little bit lighter. One of the other trade-offs, of course, is going to be what everybody's affectionately calling the crease. When you have this screen like this with a plastic covering rather than glass, of course, and you have it folding in and out, there has to be that crease point. Now, we're talking about the first foldable phone that can do this. That's already enough of a party trick and a productivity feature. You're going to be able to look past the screen covering, folding and having this little crease in it. So is being able to unfold your phone like this a party trick or something that's actually worth spending $2,000 on? Well, it's somewhere in between. The tough thing Samsung has going for it here is that it makes a fantastic phone in the Galaxy S10 Plus that is exactly half the price. Whether or not you want to spend an additional $1,000 to get this extra screen real estate, that's really going to be up to you and your financial advisor. But if you do spend that extra money, you can know that you're getting the most unique, most interesting, eye-catching, conversation-starting phone of 2019 and potentially 2020. As far as using the Galaxy Fold as a daily device, it's completely capable. Once you get over some of the awkward parts of the Galaxy Fold that detract from it, like its thickness, weight, and maybe that screen crease, it all just works. It works just like a Galaxy S10 Plus that can unfold and be twice the size on the inside. There are of course going to be trade-offs on a first-gen device like this, but you're not buying this as a mainstream consumer. You're buying it to be on the cutting edge, not just on smartphones, but on this new era of convergent devices that can fold and change shapes and do all kinds of different things both for fun and productivity. I'm Andrew Martnick with Android Central. Keep it locked here on our YouTube channel for all of our Galaxy Fold coverage going forward. This is an extremely exciting device and an exciting category. We're going to come at you with way more in the months ahead.